Right. All right, folks. So we're continuing on in Joseph. We are hurtling towards the end of Genesis. And once again, this is another chapter where plot points start to be wrapped up. Promises are made, dreams are fulfilled. So let's go ahead and jump in. So where we left off, last week we kind of did a recap of everything that was happening. And then we discussed both Pharaoh's dreams, Joseph's interpretation of it. We are introduced to the famine, and we're told that Joseph's preparation was perfectly in line. He is now number 2 in all of the kingdom. He is in control of the food supply, and sure enough, the famine hits. And so this is about the time where we get a scene change, and we leave Joseph's perspective, and we go back to the rest of the family that he left long, long ago. So, initially we just get this interaction with the Jacob. Jacob once again is in the picture. Evidently he is an old man at this point, but he's still alive. And his request for his sons is go get food. So what do we think about this reintroduction of the brothers and Jacob, and kind of going back to that storyline that we had just completely left off for a while?
Well, they had money when they opened those bags. They had money, the money that they had brought with them the first time, and they were surprised. They didn't know where it came from, and they were puzzled by it. But the old father wanted them to go back. And but
no,
he didn't.
You're ahead.
No, isn't that where we left off? Where they
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we had 43 this time. Sorry.
No, 42.
42.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
You're ahead of the game. Oh, so a slight preview. Yeah.
Well, see, I read ahead before, and I thought, oh, I think we left off here, and I read 43. But I reread 43. But okay, so anyway, they found there was grain in Europe, in Egypt, so they went there to get it.
Yeah.
It sort of put.
Oh, go for it, Larry.
Well, it sort of puts Jacob back directing things now. It goes back, and now he's going to sort of run the scenario for the next little bit. Not very nicely, he says to his sons, "What are you doing? Just sitting around looking at one another, Get up and go get us some food."
Yeah, Mary Ellen, what were you going to say?
I was just thinking about the number of years that have passed, and we talked about 12 years passing between when Joseph was sold as a slave and when he became Pharaoh's number 2. And so then that's 12 years. And then you've got the 7 years of famine. So now you've got 19 years. And probably maybe 1 or 2 more years into the famine. So these guys have gone on with their lives, their families, whatever, but their fortunes have dwindled while Joseph's have increased. And so there's a real role reversal here where they come so needy and don't expect that they will be seeing him. They sold him into slavery all those years ago. He's kind of gone from their radar, and all of a sudden they're put back together and have a serious, at least financial role reversal here.
Right. Yeah. So let's think a little bit about, were you going to add something, Larry?
Well, I mean, it may not be necessarily financial. I mean, there isn't any food. That's the problem. Jacob has got money. He can get food if he can find it, but he's got to go find it too.
That's true.
And it seems like more a matter of power. And Joseph is really into power. He's like going to rub their nose in it.
So yeah, you have all these different dynamics. You have this like small band of people. I mean, small comparatively. Egypt was an empire where we're talking about Jacob and his family, like they're running the family business, but they're running a family business in a backwater nation.
Okay.
For basically, I mean, if you're trusting the historical record, everyone looks at like the land of Cana or Palestine. There's like, what are those hillbillies doing over there? It's what's coming to mind is like the power and influence of people in Wyoming. Like, yes, there can be powerful people in Wyoming, but like when you're talking about Wyoming versus New York, what's that like new Wyoming business mogul gonna do in the Big Apple? That these folks would very much be seen as like hillbillies, as like yeah, you're a big fish in a small pond. They do have money, but money doesn't do you any good if you don't have food.
That's right.
And so yeah, there is this role reversal here. But let's think a little bit about the psychology of the family. So Jacob, we've been with Jacob for a while, since he was a boy spending time in the tent with his mother, whether it was tricking his brother, working really hard for his wives, having to like go toe to toe with Laban to try to get his fair due. What do you think of Jacob here? What kind of traits or attributes come out to you, and how he holds himself, how he like talks to his sons?
Well, it's sort of bossing them around, I guess. He also specifies that he's not going to send Benjamin
Right.
because Benjamin is so precious and he doesn't want anything to happen to him.
They seem to be concerned with his father, but he's pretty, it seems like he's in charge. He says go and they go. And he's still protecting the children, the one child left, from his wife, his first wife, his favorite wife. So
yeah,
he doesn't want to lose him.
Yeah, I had to re-look that up of like, where does Benjamin come in the story? But Benjamin, just as a little bit of refresh, when we need to, I'll see if I can bring the callbacks in. But Benjamin is born in Genesis 35. And this is the son that when Rachel gives birth to Benjamin, that's when she passes away in childbirth. So this is literally the last thing he has of his beloved wife. All right. And then, so what do we think about the psychology of the brothers? Or should we hold off on that chapter until let's hold off on the psychology of the brothers until we talk a little bit more of what their interactions later in the chapter. So, but be thinking of like, what do you perceive about their emotional state, their motivations, kind of what's going on internally with them? So Jacob very much is still, he may be old, but he seems to be in control. He's still protective of his youngest, but he says, go to the older brothers, go get us food or we're going to die. And so the brothers go. And of course, they end up in front of Joseph, who is the one who is mediating all of or brokering all these deals with the people that are coming to Egypt for grain. It says he is the governor over the land. And so when the brothers come before Joseph, they immediately bow down before him.
Like the
dream.
Right. Like specifically in the dream, what was the first dream that he had too?
I can't remember what they were. Was the sun and the moon and that dream?
The sun and moon and stars was number 2.
Okay.
The first one was stacks of grain that bow down.
Oh yeah, that's right. The grain gods.
So there is a direct callback to many, many chapters ago that this is his first dream was about grain. And now here they are coming before him asking for grain.
Mhm.
However, Joseph doesn't say, "Hey, brothers."
Yeah.
It says he saw his brothers, he recognized them.
Yeah.
The brothers do not recognize Joseph, and he treats them like strangers.
Mhm.
So what do we think is Joseph's motivation for doing this? Yeah, go for it.
Got a lot of trickery going on here, and I think I lost my train of thought. His motivation, there was some payback here.
Okay.
So trickery and payback.
He also eventually wants to see his brother, his little brother, Benjamin.
Hmm.
He wants to figure out how to get them to do, how to work that out,
And he's getting even.
Getting even.
Yeah.
But then he changes his mind and sends them back with grain and money, and he changes his mind a couple of times.
Yeah, so what do you think is like, where's Joseph's psychology here? Like, what is going on with him? Why, what do you expect like his emotions being when all of a sudden his brothers walk up out of the blue?
He's probably surprised.
Well, he doesn't immediately kill the fatted calf. He tortures them a little bit, but eventually he does. So he
I think he's just savoring the situation after all these years. This is playing right back into his hands, and why not enjoy it? He's not going to harm them, and he's going to take care of them.
From the very moment that he recognized them, he went into the deceptive mode where he had an interpreter and gave them the impression that he was Egyptian, that he only spoke the local language, that he needed an interpreter. But the trickery starts when he can listen and hear what they're saying. So, he's already, I don't know, he's already planning something. Yeah, I don't know how to express it, but from the get-go, he's on track of they're going to pay in some fashion.
Yeah. Well, they hear all of a sudden his brothers have been delivered to him, and he's in control. So I think he's sort of savoring his position, and he's thinking about what's he going to do about it. So, he throws him in jail and thinks about it for 3 days. Then he lets them know what he's thought up that they've got to do.
So this is one of the situations where I wonder if it's not as much as an either or, but a both and. There does seem to be this savoring, like, I'm gonna let them panic a little bit.
Yeah.
We're gonna let them stew in it a little bit. That kind of retribution, like, they kind of deserve it. But there still does seem to be some emotional attachment.
Yeah, because 3 days doesn't seem very long to me. They wanted them to experience what he experienced, but I mean, a week would have been, but 3 days. I don't know, that was compassionate, but he made his point.
Well, he also knows that his father and his younger brother are probably starving. He needs to get food back to them.
Yeah. So a little bit of symbolism to pull out here. 3 days in jail, going down to jail for 3 days, once again has that kind of death connotation where they're going down to the pit for 3 days. And then Joseph's kind of pulling them back out. So we've seen Joseph go down into the depths for different periods of time, but there's that like 3-day thing, which kind of has that death association. But Joseph this time is the one who pulls them out. So yes, he throws them in, he pulls them out. the thing that I'm wondering with some of the things that he's doing is he starts to talk about testing and kind of trying to pull out of them not just what they're saying, but kind of their motivation. I wonder if he wants to know if they are sorry for what they did. And he knows, because he's in a position of power, if he comes out and says it, like, hey, I'm your brother, look at where I am, of course they're going to grovel before him. So I wonder if he's also trying to work out a plan to see where they are without showing his hand. He wants to see an honest depiction of, like, are you sorry for what you did? Are you going to do to these other brothers what you did to me? Are you changed? Because sometimes,
yeah, it doesn't work though, does it? In this chapter, I mean, they don't acknowledge, do they?
well, let's continue on.
Okay.
So the initial thing, after they bow down, they say where they're from, what they're after, and Joseph's first thing is, you're spies and liars.
Mhm.
So straight out of the gate, accusatory, you're not who you say you are. And Mary Ellen, I think your comment is very apropos, that it seems like straight away he's scheming and planning, and like there's some, like, he is his father's son in a way here, that like immediately he has a game he's playing.
And he has an opportunity to do something about it, and he's kind of like, what, he needs time to think about it. The 3 days in jail or in the pit kind of give him time to work through his emotions and decide how he's going to handle this, because he totally was caught off guard when they arrived. But he also knew that he wasn't going to greet them with love and acceptance and forgiveness and whatever. He was going to retaliate in some fashion, but he needed time to figure out what that was. So.
And he accuses them of being spies twice. If you missed it the first time, you can read it the second time and understand that he's running the show.
Right, he's running the show. So does the accusation of being spies, does it work more as a threat?
Yeah, it's a threat. I would say.
It gives him a reason to put him in the pit too.
Yeah.
Looks like he's testing them.
Yeah. It's almost like a muscle flex of, like, look what I have the power to do. Like, don't mess with me. I have this power, and you have nothing, like, you have no recourse if I decide this. And so we have, like, the few times where Joseph accuses them, and then in verse 12 we see their kind of plea to him, which I think it starts to reveal the brother psychology and kind of where they are at this point in the story. It says, we are your servants, which is harkens back to the dream of, like, what are we to serve you as Lord? And here they're like, we are your servants. We are 12 brothers, sons of a certain man in Cana, the youngest, well, notably, because only 11 showed up, and all of a sudden they're like, we're 12 brothers. They have to give the explanation of, the youngest is not with us, he's with our father, and one is no more. So they admit here that they did away with one of their brothers.
Well, I'm not, they don't come out and say they're responsible for it. They just sort of say, he's no longer with us. But it does say they admit, it is an admission that they think he's probably dead.
But one of them knows he's not.
It says there's no more. That means they're like dead.
There's almost the dramatic irony here is they don't actually know they're correct. That the brothers say, we are 12, or I guess it's 10, or it would be 10 men.
10
Sorry, got that one wrong. They say we are 12 brothers. One's at home and the other one's in front of them, and they don't know it. And I love that just kiss of like dramatic irony there. And so it's at this point, Joseph is like, okay, he's gonna test them. And the question is, what is he actually testing? Because he says that, like, if you are not liars, come bring the youngest. And I believe the original plan is he's gonna let one brother go back. He's gonna keep the other brothers until the youngest one is here. But then he puts them all in jail for 3 days first. So what is Joseph actually testing here? Because he knows his brothers aren't spies. He knows that their request is genuine. I'm going to assume. My assumption is he knows his brothers are speaking honestly. He knows his brothers are 12 sons of a certain man because he is one of those sons. So what is he actually testing?
Maybe he wants to find out if they're kind of sorry of what they did to him. And he wants to find out really what they feel about it, I think.
Yeah, sooner or later, he's going to have to reveal to them who he is. And I think he's trying to find out ahead of time, you know, sort of what's going on, what sort of response is he probably going to get from them.
And he wants to make sure that they don't do anything to Benjamin.
So what's at stake with Benjamin being the youngest and the like quote unquote last son of Rachel? What is a potential way that the brothers could have treated Benjamin?
Well, just like Joseph. Because he is also a favorite.
Yeah, but for what purpose?
Right. Well, you do have once again, I mean, Jacob is terrible with favorites, and very clearly towards the end of the chapter, we see Benjamin is once again Jacob's favorite. And so we have the favorite son, baby of the family. And I feel my sense is Joseph identifies more with Benjamin. And if he was the baby of the family and was the favorite, and that's how his brothers treated him, I wonder if he's actually worried for Benjamin. Like, how have my brothers been treating this one, my little brother?
Oh yeah, Well, Benjamin is so young; he probably hasn't had a chance to flex his muscles and be obnoxious like Joseph was. But he still is Rachel's son and the favorite. So
yeah, Mary Ellen.
Well, Benjamin was born after Joseph was sold into slavery, correct? Is that correct?
Before. I think it was before, because he knew about them. He knew about it.
Yeah. We don't know what the age gap is between them, but yeah, Benjamin was born, or Joseph would have met Benjamin. Yes.
He was just a little boy.
Yeah, he was a little boy. I don't know the gap between them, but Joseph was sold after Benjamin was born. So it's not like this is news to him that he has a little brother.
Isn't Joseph he was one of the younger ones also, wasn't he? Finally had a child.
Yeah. So did you have a further thought, Mary Ellen, or is that it?
I just was trying to process how old or how what the age gap between Joseph and Benjamin would be. And you know, we know Joseph was sold into slavery when he was 18. And I was just trying to come up with an age because he was such the favored son during all that, that the other brothers were, so put out of joint, as my family would say, because of the favoritism. But at that point, Benjamin's never mentioned as another younger brother also being favored. I mean, he's just not in the picture in that story. So trying to put this in my mind.
Well, it mentions that she has another child and she dies in childbirth.
Yeah.
Was that he was already sold into slavery, or when he
No.
knew about it?
So my assumption, and this is a guesstimation here,
Okay.
I think Joseph was probably a teenager when Benjamin is born. There is a significant age gap, but I also, as knowing people who have like significant age gaps between siblings, that being a teenager with a baby brother is different than being like an adult with your own family with a baby brother. And it seems like the rest of the 10 brothers are like fully functioning adults with families. We see that at the end, Reuben guarantees Benjamin's safety with his own sons. And I'm just wondering if there's enough of an age gap that his brothers were actually more out of the house in their own realm by the time Benjamin is a teenager. But it seems like between the age gap of when Jacob is sold, or Joseph is sold into slavery, and then the time there, I'm going to guess that Benjamin is supposed to be a young, like 20-something person.
Too old, pampered and favored by his father. He should be moving on with his own life at that point, at 20 in those days.
Mm-hmm. The way that the story talks about him, though, paints him as being a lot younger, but that may just be artistic license.
Well, he's a lot younger than the older brothers.
That is the important thing. Yeah, he is significantly younger than the rest. So going back to the story, Joseph throws them in the dungeon for 3 days. The initial plan is just to send one son back. And when he pulls them out, he actually decides just to keep one brother hostage and send the 9 back. So why the change in plan? What dynamic does this change? Say, or keeping one brother in Egypt and sending the rest back?
He wants to food. Yeah.
The
Wants to
threat,
make sure they're coming back.
He's got more, there's more to the plan.
Okay, there's the plan
There's
further
much
developed.
more
Yeah.
to the plan. It's not just that he's going to keep one, send 9 back now. He's going to mess with them.
Okay. Helen,
Well,
what was it that you said?
Well, I said maybe he wants to be sure they'll come back by keeping the oldest brother there. He thinks, okay, they're going to come back sometime and get this older brother.
And he doesn't send that much food back. They run out after a while and they need to get more. So they have to go back anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mary Ellen, I didn't hear your comment earlier.
excuse me. I said the threat changes. That
Okay.
he's going to keep all of them but one in prison until the other one comes back with Benjamin. That's very heavy-handed. That is punitive. That is, that I would say, the downside of his power. But sending all but one back and sending them back with food is the positive side of his power. And it also throws out a lot of trust that these brothers won't just go back and forget about the one left behind and carry on with their lives, that they will actually come back with Benjamin to rescue the one brother who's been imprisoned. So, the power reasoning shifts, whether it's going to be negative or positive with trust.
Mm-hmm. So I thank you for that. I'm gonna take it and give a slightly different angle on it though. So
Okay.
if you have 9 brothers that are imprisoned and one gets sent back, what's the likelihood that they're going to have to, that the family business will want the 9 sons back?
Pretty good.
Pretty high, right?
Mhm.
Keeping 9 is like significant, that he's going to get what he wants if he does that. By flipping it around and keeping 1 brother and sending the 9 back, I wonder if he is testing whether they are willing to abandon another brother.
That's what I mean by the trust thing.
Okay, gotcha.
Trust in sending them back, that they will still come back and rescue the one left behind.
And if they don't, if they choose once again to try to make they think it is better to not come back and just leave his brother there. Because there's one more thing in the mix here, because the other part of his plan is Joseph says, fill their bags with grain, but put their money on top,
back.
which means it looks like they're stealing. If they
Oh.
come back, they can be accused of theft because they were supposed to pay for the grain. So the threat is, are you willing to be painted as thieves to save your brother?
Mm.
Mhm.
But the
Um,
catch-22 is if they come back and they're like, hey, we have the money, we actually never paid for the grain, we want to save our brother, they're not going to be able to save him unless they put Benjamin in harm's way.
Mhm.
Mhm.
If they bring Benjamin, Benjamin can then be collateral. So he's actually made a situation where he's seeing who they're going to be loyal to. Going to be
Yes.
loyal to Simon, or are you going to be loyal to Benjamin? Are you going to protect Benjamin, or are you going to protect Simon?
Yeah. That's kind of what I was getting at, but I hadn't
Okay.
thought it through. But yeah, he had two plans here, two outcomes to his plan.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, he knew all along too that they were going to have to come back for grain because they were starving. They needed grain. So he knew
Mhm.
probably they'd have to come back. So he could probably pull all this off when they came back.
Unless they were scared that they would be put to death for stealing. You don't steal from Egypt.
No.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and they got, in essence, the brothers got what they came for.
Mm-hmm.
They filled their bags with grain. That's what they came for. That's what they got. Now, they got a couple other things they didn't expect, but, at least they go back with what they had come for.
Mhm.
So, who knows how long the famine's going to last?
Well, and they each had a bag of grain. They had enough to survive for a little while. They didn't have copious amounts coming back for all the people that they left behind. So it's like he was measuring out how much he would give them. Because really that what he sent them with isn't that much when you think about how many people had to
They didn't go down there to get grain to feed the multitude. They went down there to get grain to feed the family.
Well, the family at this point is pretty extensive.
Yes, sure. Okay. There are a lot of people starving. They'll have to go get their own grain.
So the one thing I will say is don't forget that we have additional information that the brothers don't have. We know because of Joseph and Pharaoh's dream that this is going to be 7 years. They don't know it's going to be 7
They've got
years.
no idea.
So they have this they don't have that information. Theoretically, that this may be a 1 or 2 year thing, next year may be a better year, that they could go 1 year, and theoretically they could be planning to never go back to Egypt if they don't have to. We know that's not what happens, but they could be thinking that.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And so they arrive back home and they're like, hey, we had to leave Simon, and the dude in charge wants to see Benjamin. How does Daddy Jacob respond?
No, no, you can't take Benjamin.
You know, when the brothers get back and they open their sacks and they see the money in addition to the grain, the response is, what has God done to punish us?
Mm-hmm.
It's not, what did that guy there do? You know, now is that just an indirect reference to who actually is directing the main scenario, or what?
Well, if you there's actually one thing I skipped over, that if we rewind back to verse 21, once again, this is where we get the detail that Joseph's using an interpreter. So we know he is clothed like an Egyptian, he is talking Egyptian. They're trying to make him as Egyptian as possible, so his brothers, yes, don't recognize him.
Yeah.
And also, but he does have this power that over his brothers, that he can understand them. And so he is listening in on their conversation, and they say, alas, we are paying the penalty for what we did to our brother. There is the true admission of guilt, is we are paying for what we did for Joseph. And Joseph can hear this and hear his brother saying, oh my gosh, like, we're paying because we were terrible to the dude who's actually in front of them, but they don't know this. And then Reuben has his little response of like, didn't I tell you not to harm him? And so they very much have been holding on to their guilt for the like 20-ish years since Joseph left. They haven't had it easy. Getting rid of Joseph didn't solve their problems. They're all of a sudden attributing not just like the hardships they faced, but the famine that they're experiencing. They're like, this is punishment for us. We are being punished for what we did to Joseph. So thinking about them being in shock when they see the money and they're like, oh no, why is God doing this to us? I feel like in that same psychology, like, this really bad thing is happening because we've never atoned for doing away with our brother.
Okay. But Joseph was the one that put the money back in the sacks.
He was.
So this has got to be part of Joseph's plan.
It is. So why is God doing this? Evidently, Joseph is currently acting as the hand of God, churning this situation even more in his plan.
So the fact that the money sets them up to be called thieves if they should return just sets the bar higher, whether they want to decide to leave Simon or not.
Right. Stakes are high now. And so Jacob's response, at least to me, with what he says when they kind of explain the situation, when they see the money on the bags, is almost one of a bitter old man. He says, I am the one you have bereaved of children. Evidently, it sounds like Jacob has found out what the brothers have done, because this is very accusatory. You have bereaved me of children. Joseph is no more. Simon is no more. He's writing his eldest son off as dead here. And now you would have me take Benjamin. All of this happens to me. It's very much focused on what's happening to Jacob in his life, his beloved stuff, and it's very me, which was interesting seeing it. Did you all get that kind of sense?
He's playing victim.
Mhm. Yeah. Not really taking ownership for the fact that his favoritism has destroyed many a relationship in his life.
Mhm.
And so Reuben's response is, okay, you may kill my 2 sons if I do not bring Benjamin back. Reuben's not giving up here. He's like, I'm going to take Benjamin. I'm going to save Simon here. And you can kill my sons if anything happens. Like, that is strong words there. And very confident that nothing's going to happen. Or, yeah, Larry?
And Reuben was the one that tried to dissuade the brothers from killing Joseph.
Right. Mm-hmm. So do you feel like he has some an added feeling of like guilt or remorse or responsibility, since his plan was to save Joseph all along?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And isn't Reuben the oldest?
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, I think you're
Yeah.
right. Simon might be the second oldest. Yeah, Reuben's the oldest. Yeah,
Reuben's the-
sorry about that.
Hmm.
Almost like I couldn't save one brother, but now I am not gonna fail saving my other brother.
Okay.
So the final line in this chapter is, my son shall not go down with you. Notably, that phrase go down is the same that's used to go down to the pit and go down to the depths of Sheol. Once again, that is kind of a death statement. My son will not go down with you. For his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If harm should come to him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with the sorrow of Sheol. So basically, no way, no how, not gonna happen. So what do we think?
Well, Simon's still in prison.
Mm-hmm.
While this is all going on, he's certainly paying the price. So, you know, it's kind of, the chapter's kind of leaving us in limbo here.
Yeah, a bit of a cliffhanger.
That's
Obviously, something's got to happen to change Jacob's mind.
Mm-hmm.
This is the time you said I couldn't stop reading.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is reading.
Yeah,
There's
Joanne
also-
said I couldn't stop reading. I said, are you done with that yet? No, I can't stop.
It's like material that leaves you hanging over the cliff. What are you gonna land on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the part where it's like this is a very engaging story. This is why there's a musical about this one. Like, I don't blame you all who are reading ahead, because yeah, this is a good story. Like, all the plot twists, like now we're into trickery and deception and irony. It's, yeah, there's a lot going on here. So by the end here, what do we assume, or let's talk about like the mindset of the brothers once again. So we see Jacob is the father. He's old at this point. He's still in charge, but he seems kind of bitter and over what has happened in life. What do we assume is going on in the mindset of the different brothers? We talked a little bit about Reuben, but what do we assume for the rest of them? How do you think they're responding to all of these different dynamics at play?
I think they're worried.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, all their lives are at risk. Joseph has the power to do anything he wants.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Helen, you're on mute.
They probably feel like they have to obey their father, but they're probably torn too. You know, if we do this, we'll probably be killed. If we do that, we're going to displease our father. And it's either one is like terrible. So they're probably of two minds. But right now they're going to go along with the father. That's what I think they are thinking.
Mhm.
Avoid being killed.
Does it seem like they've had a change of heart since we last saw them?
Well, they want to take Benjamin and go. So probably they don't have any designs on killing Benjamin. They want to save him.
Did
They're very-
Joseph?
They're very clear on the importance of Benjamin to the father. They're very sensitive to that.
Yeah, but they do decide to take Benjamin, and Jacob allows that because they really need the grain.
Mhm.
Yes.
They're hungry.
Larry, then Mary Ellen, because Larry, I know you've been trying to jump in.
Did Joseph stipulate that all of the brothers would have to come back with Benjamin?
No.
If he didn't, then Reuben could just take him back. And in fact, isn't that what Reuben sort of proposed?
Yes.
Yeah, Reuben's volunteering as tribute. Like, I will do this.
Mhm.
Reuben's willing to take the brunt of it, it seems like. But yeah, there's no stipulation that all the brothers have to come back.
Okay, so that takes a little worry off all the brothers, the rest of the brothers.
Mhm.
They may not have to worry about it.
Yeah. So Mary Ellen, what were you gonna say?
Well, my first reaction is that they're staying out of it and just letting Reuben negotiate with his father. But what I find interesting is there's no mention of Simeon being in prison all this time. That they're going through all their food. They're worried about whether Benjamin will come back alive if he goes, but there's no compassion for their brother who is, who they're trying to rescue, but they're letting him sit there. So I find that interesting that.
Yeah.
Well, there's not a lot of compassion. And that compassion isn't a big component with anybody, except I think that Joseph has compassion when they come back and he realizes that they don't know whether they're sorry, but they certainly need him. And they did bring Benjamin.
So thinking about what the brothers are going through, is there a difference between being remorseful and regretful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between those two states of mind? What does being remorseful actually entail?
Sorrow, real sorrow.
You want to make up for it.
Mhm.
And you're remorseful and you feel terrible if you can't.
Yeah. Yeah, and regretful maybe, well,
It's too bad it's happened.
yeah, bad things happen. Yeah, right, I wish I hadn't done it, but there are bad consequences.
And the action may have had some bad consequences.
Right. And rather than caring about how it felt to the other person.
Yeah, whereas remorse is just how you feel.
Yeah, but I think remorse is maybe you're taking a little more of the responsibility personally. You can be regretful for something that happens that you are almost just an observer.
Right.
Remorse also has some element of guilt where you're kind of acknowledging that you had a major role in this. Regretful, is something you can move on from and, kind of leave it. We've all done things we regret doing and we've moved on and, our lives probably aren't much different than if we had not done whatever it is that we're regretful for. But remorse is much deeper. So I'm going to say it has guilt in it, acknowledgement of guilt.
I think this difference is key when we think about how we give apologies and reading other people's apologies. It's always interesting when like public figures give a formal apology of the difference of, are they regretful or remorseful? The regretful almost sounds like, I'm sorry you were affected by my words.
Or sorry, but I did it for this reason.
Yeah, the sorry buts.
It was really false, yeah.
Where it seems like what they're actually apologizing for is like, I am sorry I did this because I don't like the consequences of my actions. Like, I regret doing that because I don't like what's happening now. I regret doing that. I don't want to face the consequences. It's almost like it's me centered, or it's like shoving off responsibility, which is I am sorry you felt hurt by what I said. That's not saying that you were being hurtful. It's saying you were responsible for your emotions and you got hurt by this. I'm sorry you got hurt. This doesn't deal with me.
When you apologize, or when I apologize and I don't, there's no buts with it.
Mm-hmm.
It feels totally different. It brings you closer to the other person.
Mm-hmm.
You're showing compassion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where remorse is that style, or is in that space, right? Where there's almost an accepting that accountability that is established. Accountability, accepting that yes, what you did was wrong. Where the other one kind of feels like it was wrong for the situation, but it could have been right. Remorse really feels like that, very much accepting that this was a wrong thing to do and I'm going to take responsibility for it, and I'm not going to excuse it. I'm just going to let it be that it was wrong. So my question is, are the brothers regretful or remorseful for what they did?
Depends on the brother.
Say more.
Well, Reuben is remorseful. I mean, he tried from the very beginning to save Joseph from, the brother's action. The other brothers kind of are like this milling crowd of sheep, is how I envision them. But they seem to be going along with the majority, whatever the decision is, they're going along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Reuben will take a stand against all of his brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And so he stands out for me differently, that he is remorseful, they are regretful.
Okay.
But he's also saying, I told you so.
But we don't really hear much about what the other brothers, other than they're all upset when they find their money back in their grain sack. But other than that, well, I guess when they sold Joseph off into slavery, they were all, with the exception of Reuben, wanting to kill him at first.
Well, know that he was sold into slavery. Just Reuben did, when they weren't paying attention.
Yeah, it was Judah's idea to sell him into slavery. It was Judah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Reuben must have known. You think he knew? Yeah, I don't. For some reason, they didn't.
I think Joseph. I think excuse me.
Go for it.
I think Joseph was probably disappointed that he didn't learn more by putting them in prison for those 3 days, because nothing came out of the group. It was all a group think. They didn't have any suggestions or any offers on how to resolve issues or so on. They just kind of, other than Reuben, they all seem to think alike and follow each other like a little group of 9 sheep.
Yeah. I feel like you get some bit of regret and some bit of remorse in their conversation when they're after the jail, but when they're talking to one another in front of Joseph, saying, "We are paying the penalty for what we did to our brothers."
That's
That
true.
sounds like regret. Like, we should have put up with the little brat, because look, now we're paying for it in our consequences. Where Reuben's like comment was, "Did I not tell you it was wrong?" Like,
Well,
it was wrong sounds different to me than we're paying the price here.
Yeah,
mhm.
well, I think that they mean that they don't know what the connection is, but they assume that God is punishing them in some way, I think.
Mhm, mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, folks, that's about time for this week.
Just as the
Any
last,
final thoughts of as part of this we didn't touch on?
yeah, as a last thought, in Jacob's defense, I mean, he doesn't know what's happened. And
Mhm.
he's telling them, I've already lost one son. I don't
Yeah.
want to lose another. You know?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can understand his protectiveness almost.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, next week the story will continue. It sounds like a lot of you all have already read ahead, so which is good, because the next chapter is actually kind of chunky. I mean, these last few chapters have been longer, but they go fast, don't they?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, should I pray us out for today?
Yes.
All right. Good and gracious God, this week we begin the season of Lent, which is a season of reflection, a season where we consider the darker sides of humanity, the parts of us that don't always get it right, the parts of us that are less than what we hope, the parts of us that fail to live up to our aspirations, our hopes, and your designs for us. So as we consider the season, as we reflect on both our lives and how we live them, help us feel true remorse when we get it wrong. Help us to understand that when we harm others, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that we do need to take responsibility. Help us to see the places where we do need to step up. Help us to understand how to communicate in ways that are gentle, in ways that people will hear, in ways that build up the community of God and the communities we're in, so that we don't come to these points where we feel like we have to trick each other into the truth, but we can trust each other and love each other and trust that you are moving amongst us. So this morning, I want to give extra prayers for Judy Lewis for a speedy recovery. Also prayers for Pat Lundy, who is also recovering, and any others in our community that are struggling, who are in recovery, who are working or dealing with hard situations. So we pray all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you all. See y'all later.
Thank you.
Have a safe week.